49ers just wrapped up their final day of open training camp, day 12. I was there in attendance, and I've got my guy Marco here. We're going to be breaking it down. Obviously, there's nothing going on with the 49ers apart from their lovely training camp practices currently. Nothing especially about a disgruntled star. The 49ers did make some receiver news earlier today. They did cut Tariq Owens. They signed a receiver in his place for the preseason game. But of course, there's a lot to talk about with Brandon Aiyuk as well. I'm here with my guy Marco. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good. A lot of information to talk about today, right? A lot of training camp talk. Jed York was in attendance. John Lynch was in attendance. A lot of people in
Aiyuk's
attendance.
agent Ryan Williams was in
Let's
attendance, just at a different location.
before we get to any of that, Rohan, let's give the audience like 10 seconds to get here, real quick. I got some stuff to talk about. What is up, faithful? As you guys all know, Rohan was at training camp today. I'm here. I've been talking to a lot of people within the last few days regarding the Brandon Aiyuk situation, making sure I cross all my T's, dot all my I's regarding the situation. Rohan, should we talk about practice first, or training camp, or should we talk about Brandon Aiyuk first? What do you prefer to do? Should we wait, give people time?
I'm trying to think. Now, I know that you are going to have some very fun thoughts to say. That's why I asked you to be on today's show. And so I'm wondering, do I want to hear the thoughts now or should I save it? And I think we'll save it till the second half of this episode. We'll get through practice. Sure, a lot of people, as excited as they are about practice, they are excited about the Brandon Aiyuk side. So we'll talk about both. We'll start with practice and then we'll head on to the situation that has become, the one now that has gone completely national, Brandon Aiyuk, obviously, and his contract issues.
And if you guys want, you guys to go ahead and drop a comment, super chat, questions, anything like that on both channels. We're live today on both channels. So make sure you guys are locked in. Like I said, man, I have a lot of stuff to talk about regarding the Brandon Aiyuk situation. So if you guys want to invite your friends, your family to come talk about it or hear about it, I'm going to talk about stuff after we talk about training camp practice. So, Rohan, let's get to training camp. Before I get into any of it, I don't want to talk about Aiyuk until the second half. I gave Rohan the opportunity to choose the first half or the second half, right? Rohan said, let's go with the first half being in training camp. Rohan, talk to me. How was training camp today? The 49ers receivers were there. Heard they struggled. Heard they didn't look too good. Obviously, Ricky Pearsall, banged up shoulder. Debo Samuel had a little scare. There's no Tariq Owens. He got cut with an injury destination, got a broken hand. Talk to me about the receiver. This is before we get into anyone else. How did the receivers look today?
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm telling you, it's a bit of a struggle. It is. And when I say that, it's specifically about separation. And I don't know if this is because we've been so accustomed to seeing Kyle Shanahan's offenses be as dominant as ever, find ways to get receivers open like crazy in the last 4 years, that when I look at the product on the field currently, it's a bit concerning to see the lack of separation. But that continued, on today is Wednesday. Longer practice. What are longer practices usually? Gives you a better chance to kind of come away with takeaways, come away with the overall perspective of how training camp or the day went. This was a defense-dominated day. Really a good amount of sacks, but as we've reported really specifically over the second half of training camp with pads being on, the majority of these sacks are covered sacks. Yes, the offensive line has gotten beat at times, but I think that they've done a lot better than the fans anticipated. In the second half of camp, set aside for a day or two, I think they've done well enough. It's a lot of coverage sacks, and this is a time to experiment. So I don't care about the sacks as much because I don't care about a quarterback throwing things away. But what's clear is Brock Purdy is looking at his first and his second read. Things aren't open, and as he looks to the second half of the field, that's when the pressure is there and the sack is coming. when you have a mixture of an offensive line who's good, but maybe not good enough to hold for 3-4 seconds, like maybe an elite offensive line would, and then obviously the issue with separation where your first and second read are not open, it doesn't lead to the prettiest practice. And so when you talk about the receivers, there was no Ricky Pearsall today, but Jawan Jennings returned. You had Danny Gray back in the mix, you had Tay Martin back in the mix. It's pretty much all of the receivers out there, but Ricky Pearsall and Brandon Aiyuk. And the struggles for separation just continue. And the Niners, they win in other ways. They had a lot of passes near the line of scrimmage that you got a good amount of yards per catch. Deebo Samuel had a couple. They've been operating a couple of guys. Trent Taylor, Jacob Cowing got a few catches in that realm. Maybe not as many yards on those, but you see them using the receivers in a couple of different ways. But ultimately, the separation is important, and it hasn't necessarily been there, set aside for maybe Chris Conley at times.
And what sucks is you have a top 10, arguably top 5, or however you want to look at a receiver without statistics and stuff like that. Like, you watch the film, he's absolutely a top 10 receiver. You could obviously pay. Do you think the receivers like not being able to separate do you notice anything different regards to Brock Purdy's play and the offensive play? Because I heard during team move the ball period that they kind of struggle to move the ball. Like, and are you noticing it? Because you were there throughout camp, all of camp for the most part. Did you notice anything different regarding to the 49ers offense? Obviously, move the ball period is extremely important in terms of training camp because you're actually trying to simulate a game-like setting. You get a first down, you get a second down, third down, and you're trying to move the ball on the defense, and you're trying to actually score rather than just being in red zone where you're already kind of simulating a red zone period. What did they look like today? Was it struggled? And throughout camp, how have you thought the offense has looked?
Yeah, specifically today, it was a defense-dominated day. Like I said, there was a lot of move the ball. It was a scrimmage-heavy day. They went over 2 hours, and really that whole last hour was essentially move the ball. There were several drives. There was the only day that I kind of thought that resembled like this was Saturday, which was the heaviest practice that they've had so far. When it came to move the ball, though, there was only one touchdown. And I know the offense doesn't necessarily get the chance to finish out the drive always. They give you maybe one or two plays when you get near the red zone, and then they go for the field goal to set aside for the next offense. But still, there weren't that many plays. And the concerning part is when you look at the first, second, and third team offense, there was only one true 3 and out, and that came with the top offense. That came with the ones. And I'll read out the plays from that specific drive. Brock Purdy, his first pass was the deep ball to Kyle Juszczyk down the sidelines. Somewhat of a 50-50 ball. Juszczyk didn't have as much separation, but, that was the read. And it was broken up by Rock Ya-Sin. That was 1st and 10. 2nd and 10, Jordan Mason. He has a short run. Deommodore Lenoir is there, stops it. It goes to 3rd and 8. 3rd and 8, Brock Purdy's looking for Jawan Jennings. This one was more on Purdy. A crosser. Jennings had gotten somewhat enough separation from Renardo Green, but the ball was a little behind, allowed Green to stretch out his hands. Incompletion. So you're already at 4th and 7 there. There's a 3 and out. They gave him a free set of downs. Purdy hit Ronnie Bell. It was a contested catch where he just allowed Ronnie Bell to go high point it, Green in close coverage. That made a catch, but then on the next play, incompletion to Ronnie Bell again. Green in close coverage, just not separation there. Was a holding call on there. I think the holding call might have been a little iffy. I know he was handsy. Didn't think that there was a penalty on that play, but another incompletion. As you can tell, it's a bit of a struggle to move the ball. And the one thing that I'm kind of sensing is you really kind of need the run game to click. Because if the run game can click, then it's going to open up the passing game with this specific set of offense without Brandon Aiyuk on the field. But without the run game, when you're talking about specifically winning vertical routes, there aren't that many guys that can clearly win vertical routes right now on this team.
When you talk about establishing the run, right? Like, are they not able? Is the offensive line not able to get the run game going? It's obviously Christian McCaffrey. So that's also going to hurt your offense, your run game too, when you're trying to run the ball. But do you notice the defensive players cheating? Like, for example, your linebackers, are they sitting on routes? Are your corners sitting on routes? What does it look like? Are they? Because obviously in practice, you start playing against people they can't beat you deep. You start cheating, obviously, because you're in an environment. What do you see from the 49ers defensive players? Are they cheating on the offense, or is it more so, the offense just can't get it done?
I'll just give one example. There was a route combination. It was Chris Conley on the outside, Renardo Green in coverage there, Lenore in the slot against Jawan Jennings. Usually, the receiver, what they want to do specifically in the slot on this type of route, you want to attack the cornerback's leverage. Run the route vertical to where at the stem you're right at the cornerback's leverage, to where then you can get the advantage when you're either breaking in on a dig, going out for the out route, because if you cut the route too short, you're allowing the cornerback to break. If you get too vertical, you're not running the route to the requirement that it's asked to be. You break after 10 yards, break after 8 yards. But a thing like this that you see, a guy like Diamondo Lenore today, because there was that 2 route combination with the guy on the outside, knowing that Jawan Jennings may not be the fastest guy in and out of breaks, he's sitting on that inside route, knowing he has the help to the outside and knowing that he's got the ability to break. Sure enough, Jawan Jennings breaks on the dig. Lenore is there. It's a PBU. There's not enough separation there, and Purdy has to throw the ball with the way that the route combination is there. And so it's just one play like that, but you can kind of sense when there isn't a necessarily a deep vertical threat that you worry about, or when there's safety help over the top, the quarterbacks can play these routes a little differently, and you get a little bit more comfortable, I guess. And again, you're running against the same group of guys over and over again, but you're getting a little bit more comfortable with sitting on certain routes, being able to diagnose whether it's going to be, what kind of breaks are in the routes, how to kind of judge receivers and things like that. And so they might be cheating a little bit, but ultimately right now, it's just the Niners are playing sticky coverage, knowing that they can get pressure there sooner than later, and trusting that one of the two things can balance.
Which kind of sucks, because obviously, like, when your defense is cheating, you're going up against the same defense same offense over and over and over again. You kind of begin to see that defense cheat. Obviously, there's no Fred Warner today, so you should have the advantage on the offensive side because there's no Fred. I believe did Charvarius Ward practice today?
Yeah, Fred Warner was the main guy. Charvarius Ward was there, but overall, majority of the defense, I believe, was out there. Yeah.
Okay, so majority of the defense being there is advantage defense. No Fred obviously is a big factor. Obviously, you don't have no Christian McCaffrey. You don't have Brandon Aiyuk, who we'll get to in a second. I love that you're talking about Renardo Green, man. Like, to be honest, like that stuff about Renardo Green being sticky in coverage. We heard, I believe, Deebo Samuel talked about him a little bit in the press conference. He talked about how Renardo Green just tells him, like, I just want to play press cut, man, bro. I don't even care about playing zone. Like, that's the kind of corner and the confidence you want in a corner. Do you think he ends up being the starter in the nickel spot or outside?
I don't know if he's going to end up being the starter, just because Isaac Yiadom has also done a good job this camp. But the one thing that I'm kind of a little bit more, intrigued about with Renardo Green is that the Niners are actually letting him play on the outside. He said it himself. He's a press man corner. We both watched the film on the draft. We said, I think that this guy can stick on the outside because he has the press man capabilities. Now, Renardo Green is small. That is true. He's going to have to bulk up. We also saw cornerbacks like Diamondo Lenore come in smaller and then bulk up, where Diamondo Lenore looks 100% the part of an NFL corner. He's small. And maybe the Niners don't want 2 small outside cornerbacks if Diamondo Lenore is the guy they ultimately, go with for their future, and it would be him and Green. But he has the capability, and they're allowing him to, to be on the outside. Yesterday, with Yiadom out, Green worked. It was a mix. He worked on the outside at times. He worked in the nickel at times. Today, almost exclusively on the outside. Diamondo Lenore was the slot cornerback. Even when it came to base packages, you'd see Renardo Green getting some of those reps as the outside corner. This is something different, right? This is something where you're allowing him to be tested with the top team. And again, no Brandon Aiyuk, but you're seeing Renardo Green go up against Deebo Samuel on certain reps, right? And it's things like that, because what led to the end of today? Renardo Green had one of the best days. He had a couple of PBUs. He's sticking in coverage. Sure, he had the one penalty called. He had a contested catch from Ronnie Bell that was caught on him, which was still solid coverage. But you're seeing him start to pick up reps and do his part on the outside, get his hands on footballs, because he's got long arms. He's got the capabilities. It's just now putting together the reps. I don't know if it comes this year, but what I do know right now is the 49ers kind of have a strong quartet of cornerbacks that they trust, whereas last year they only had 2. You didn't know who you could trust with that cornerback 3 role. Right now, they got 2 guys they could trust with the 3 role. And so it kind of depends on their flexibility if injuries occur and things like that.
Man, that's great to hear. Talk to me a little bit more. So obviously the secondary looks great. Any rookies outside of Bernardo Green stand out? Obviously today was a longer practice. Some of the players are out. Anyone standing out outside of Bernardo Green?
Has to be Dominic Puny. And I think there's one clear area where he's standing out. One-on-one reps. Dominic Puny is a beast at one-on-ones. His anchor is like, I'll say this. I've watched Aaron Banks and other guys anchor over the last few years, where you see them work in one-on-ones. And one-on-ones aren't indicative maybe of how they practice, how they're going to play in a true game setting, but at least it gives you a sense for their pass protecting skills when going up in pass rushing drills. Guys like Banks, they have struggled to anchor. That's why you've seen Javon Hargrave just bull rush through and consistently win reps against Banks in this training camp and in team drills. Dominic Puny, on the other hand, he is held up. He goes up against Malik Collins on a consistent basis. And I'll say this, Puny has won a ton of reps since that second period of one-on-ones kind of came. They've done a lot more one-on-ones since the second half of last week. And the practices this week, you're starting to see more one-on-ones. And so I like what I'm seeing from Dominic Puny. He seems to have a strong firm hold on that right guard spot. John Feliciano is injured, nowhere to be seen right now, and he also was playing primarily more at center than at right guard. Dominic Puny is the guy right now at right guard, and it's unfortunate that Spencer Burford got injured, but he's taken advantage of the opportunity. He seems the part as a pass protector, and it's now just becoming an overall better offensive lineman for the 49ers and becoming more consistent. Impressed what I've seen from him. He's probably been the best, I would say, best guy for the rookies in training camp so far, just because he's played more with the ones than Bernardo Green.
That's great to hear, man, because obviously the Niners need the upgrade along the offensive line and everything like that, especially that right side. Great to hear that Dominic Puny is dominating there. Rohan, do you think the Niners, with Trent Williams out, do you think it's benefiting them that they're able to see like their offensive line, and obviously with Brandon Aiyuk possibly being a trade candidate and everything like that? Do you think they end up getting an offensive lineman in return, or like what's obviously Trent not being there is huge, and it's kind of been overshadowed because of the Brandon Aiyuk news that we'll get to in a minute. But what are you noticing from the O-line without Trent there? Obviously, Jalen Moore has been hyped up by Chris Forrester, saying he's a good pass blocker, not a great run defender or a run blocker. What are you seeing across the offensive line? Is this an offensive line that if they don't end up having Trent Williams there, that the 49ers could win with, or is this a nightmare waiting to happen if they roll this O-line out?
Now, first question, do I think that this is a good sign, like in the sense that they could test out some of the younger guys since Trent Williams is not there? No. I would much rather prefer Trent Williams to be here, and I understand what you were meaning. I still think that when you talk about developing continuity and things like that for the offensive line, it's much better to have Trent Williams there, even if Trent Williams misses every other practice or, has these scheduled veteran rest days like some of the guys like Nick Bosa have. It's still important. And I think for a guy like Aaron Banks, who did not play the best last year, who has struggled to begin camp this year and then kind of starting to level out, I think it would do so much for his confidence to be better at the start of the season if he's playing against or next to Trent Williams, getting to pick Trent Williams' mind in the middle of plays or right after plays, as they go into huddles and things like that, or on the sidelines. I think it would be beneficial for a guy like him. Now, I will say this. I think the offensive line has improved when it comes to those tackles. I think Holton McKivitz has improved a little bit, and I think Jalen Moore specifically has improved when it comes to pass protection. Does that mean that they're winning every rep? No. They're going up against Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa has won his fair share of reps. He wins a lot, both in one-on-ones and 11s. Had a couple of sacks today, where he was able to get through. I think Leonard Floyd had a sack. Bosa had a sack on Jalen Moore. Leonard Floyd had a sack on McKivitz. And so there are these up and down reps for sure. I don't know necessarily what to make of the entire offensive line, but I will say this. I think I'm more confident right now about the tackles than I am about the interior, just because there's uncertainty with Jake Brendel. He is in and out of first team drills as he kind of, I think it's more so to just protect him and preserve him as he deals with the knee issues that he kind of dealt with during the offseason. But we haven't seen too much, right? Different from Jake Brendel, and his play wasn't that inspiring last year. And Aaron Banks wasn't inspiring last year. I think he was average, and I think the 49ers need him to be better this year. And so to me, the biggest question will be with the players that have kind of been there, which is the interior offensive line. How are they going to improve rather than the tackles?
Okay. So now you can control when we get to BA if you're almost done with training camp and everything, but I just want to let everyone know when I do get to BA and we do get to that conversation, we will be shutting down the Twitter feed. So you probably want to get over to the YouTube once we do begin the BA conversation, because if I say stuff that I will say stuff. I know for sure I will. Regarding the situation that I've heard, it will not be on Twitter stream. Like, that's for sure. I'm not letting it go to Twitter. Yeah. It's going to be on the YouTube only. So make sure you guys are on the YouTube channels, whether it's Rohan Chakravarthi's personal channel or it's over at the Clutch Gene Sports channel, because I will say some of the stuff that I've heard from multiple people, and it's been confirmed by each of those people. So just want to let you guys know that. I know there's a lot of you guys throughout the streams, but Rohan, there's a question here. How does this impact Super Bowl chances this season? I don't know if HR is talking about he's talking about the BA situation, the Trent situation, or the offensive line. But we can talk about the offensive line. How does it impact our Super Bowl chances this year? Obviously, with no Trent.
I mean, no Trent changes it completely. I think I've said this the last couple of off seasons, and I honestly still think it stands, despite maybe Trent Williams taking a bit of a step down the last 2 years. You know, when it comes to his play, he's still elite. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know if it's that maybe all-time level season that he had back in 2021 when he might have been the greatest offensive lineman that we've seen in a very long time. But without Trent Williams, he's the most important player on this team. This team is a much different team than Trent Williams, because not only do you trust on him and depend on him, and you can scheme things to the left side from a pass protection standpoint, that Brock Purdy knows that he's got his blindside protector. It can change the way that he kind of perceives things. He won't force things as much. He knows that he can roll out that side. He's got a lot more comfortability, but more importantly, in the run game, there's so much that you could scheme to the left side. And when you have the capable pieces to do so, you're able to do so much. Whereas Christian McCaffrey, you don't maybe have to depend on him as much to improvise in the middle of plays in run situations to create such big gains. And yes, Christian McCaffrey has that innate ability to do so. I'm not taking away anything from that. But I think if you're able to play a little bit more in structure, you can protect him maybe a little bit more. You understand how it works, and Trent Williams is the best way to do so. I think the Niners need Trent Williams if they're going to make a Super Bowl, because the difference with and without Trent Williams is probably, honestly, 4 games. I think you don't win. I think you win maybe 2 to 3 games less if you have Trent Williams, and then that's not including the playoffs. That's the type of impact he has on your team. Just because, 1, pass protection standpoint, there's obviously a drop-off, but 2, you're also worried about quarterback protection. This is training camp. Sacks don't matter. You're never going to have the quarterback get hit. But one of those hits could end up being detrimental to Brock Purdy's season, and it's a lot more likely if it's Jalen Moore or whoever out there at left tackle when it's compared to Trent Williams.
Rohan, when it comes to training camp, what has been the most surprising player that stood out? Obviously, you've been there for a couple of days, pretty much the entire camp, outside of 2 days, I believe, right? Or maybe 1.
Yeah.
Who's the most impressive player? Obviously, Deebo Samuel's been very impressive, but that you were not expecting for them to stand out. Someone that stood out and was like, whoa, that guy should be a starter. If not, he's like one of our best backup players on the roster or at that position.
Now, I don't know if it would be necessarily surprising for me specifically, but for the fans, I think it could be. Let's start with the defense, because the guy is just clearly comes to mind. D. Winters. D. Winters has been great this training camp. He's been absolutely everywhere. And if you're just watching D. Winters, in 11-on-11s, just solely focusing on D. Winters, you see how quick he triggers. The instinctual ability is there. Today, I think the second play of team drills today, D. Winters it was a run from Jordan Mason to the left side in between the B gap. I think it was the B gap. Mason's looking to take this run to the outside. Winters sees that Aaron Banks is, he's moving to get the block secured, and he just shoots like a cannon, beats Banks to the block, tackle for loss. He's there within an instant. And it's not only him triggering quick, it's him making the right decisions, trusting the instincts and doing it. Winters has also been good in coverage. That's the thing. It's not like he's a one-dimensional linebacker and there's like a flaw in that other area. He's been good enough in coverage. He holds up for the most part, in 11 on 11s in zone and things like that. And so I trust him as a good linebacker. I think he's been the second best, probably behind Fred Warner so far in camp. And so D. Winters is kind of the standout to me so far.
That's great to hear because, man, I don't want to see Devondre Campbell on the field. I'll be honest with you. I don't want to see him starting at linebacker. Nothing against him. I just don't think he's at that age where last year I didn't think he was a good linebacker for the Packers. I didn't think he looked slower and everything like that. So I definitely want to see one of the younger linebackers take over that spot, whether it's D. Winters or anything or even Jalen Graham. To be honest, I think they have more upside. It makes more sense that D. Winters is flying around. His athleticism shows on tape. From his TCU days. I'm excited to see him during preseason. Anyone else on the offensive side of the ball? How did Jacob Cowan look? I know he came back to practice the last 2 days. How's he looked?
Yeah, it's getting back there. He had a really good start, I'd say, to training camp. When you were talking about him and just the ability, when you talk about the way he moves, it's different, right? And he was making a couple of plays. Still working back from the injury. They kind of used him more in a short distance route. So some of the catches have been screened. Some of the catches have been in the short distance. You haven't seen him maybe used in the variety of ways that you'd initially anticipate. I'm curious to see what his usage is in the preseason. Do they limit him because of the injury, or do they let him loose and see what he can do in multiple different roles? Cowan, it's a kind of to be determined. I don't think that there was enough in camp, but I like the player, and I thought the initial start to camp was good before the injury.
Okay. Anything else you want to talk about regarding training camp, Rohan?
Yeah, I want to talk about one specific thing, and it's related to the contract situation with Mr. Brandon Aiyuk. At this time, I'm going to turn off that Twitter stream for you guys. Make sure that you guys hop on either Marco channel or my channel over here, because we're going to have some fun, as Marco might have a few things he's got to say and get off his chest. Make sure you guys tune in, because that's the fun part of today's show.
Boom, it's off. Let me go ahead and confirm that it's off real quick, though, Rohan. I just want to make sure it's completely off.
Believe it is.
Cool.
Yeah. Cool. There we go.
So with that off, Rohan, you can lead us if you want to go into it, and we'll begin talking about Brandon Aiyuk.
There's a lot, right? I mean, Brandon Aiyuk, this situation has now gone on until, I don't know what day it is, like August or something. Yeah, August 7th. And obviously Monday was the big day when it came to the Brandon Aiyuk situation. You're hearing all of these reports that he is now more likely to be moved. And it's not only the initial people that you've heard it from, it's from national media that Brandon Aiyuk has a good chance to be traded. Marco, what was your initial reaction kind of when you're hearing this, especially knowing that we've talked about how the 49ers have handled this situation up until now, and it's somewhat reaching a boiling point this late into the process?
So my initial reaction was, I don't buy it. I feel like the 49ers have handled this the most possible way they could handle it, being terrible. You don't trade a player in August when you're in a Super Bowl or bust season. You don't offer an all-pro player $24.5 million to $25 million as an initial offer when he's an all-pro player and the market is much better than that. You don't offer those kind of numbers, Rohan. Like, that's, to be honest, where people want to get Brandon Aiyuk felt is being disrespectful, he's being greedy, blah blah blah. Oh, Brandon Aiyuk wants $30 million from the Niners. Bullshit. Brandon Aiyuk wants to be treated like a man, bro. He doesn't want to be treated like a child, which the 49ers organization has done on multiple occasions, not wanting to negotiate a contract with him, offering him 24.5 to 25 million range. That I've been confirmed that those are the numbers. Now, Brandon Aiyuk had a high of an offer from the New England Patriots. So the 49ers did this thing where they knew Brandon Aiyuk was going to say no to certain teams, Rohan. They already had a list of teams that they knew Brandon Aiyuk wanted to go to when he initially told them, I want to trade, right? They kind of had an understanding. The Cleveland Browns have never offered Amari Cooper. Let's keep it real. That offer that they mentioned about Amari Cooper and a second, that's not on the table. Like, do you guys really want to believe the voices of the 49ers? Like, they're not telling you guys.
And Marco, before you continue, let me just quickly say from a football standpoint as to why that doesn't make sense. The Cleveland Browns did something just a couple of weeks ago as they were negotiating a contract issue with Amari Cooper. Cooper was looking for guaranteed money. He had, he has a void year, but he had a year left on his contract with no guaranteed money. He wanted some guarantees. The Browns did something not necessarily unprecedented, but something you don't really see teams doing. They guaranteed his entire salary for the year and gave him a $5 million raise. So the Cleveland Browns would actually be on the book for the entirety of this contract because they've already given the money in a signing bonus. That would be a problem if they were to trade for him, because not only would they be paying Amari Cooper for this year, they would also be paying for an extension for Brandon Aiyuk. But continue.
So, but the funny part is Cooper was never involved in that trade. He was never. The Niners have not gotten an offer with Amari Cooper in it. Numbers, obviously, when you look at the numbers, they also don't make sense. That's the 49ers trying to say, hey, you know what? We have offers from the Browns. They knew he wasn't going to go to the Browns. They knew this, right? You take that offer. Okay, we're willing to take that offer. Or at least you say you're willing to take that offer. They weren't. Because there's no real offer on the table from the Browns in terms of Amari Cooper. So now he tells them no. Okay, well, now they could tell Brandon Aiyuk, well, you said no to a team we were willing to take a trade from. New England Patriots. $31 million, from what I've been told, was offered to Brandon Aiyuk. If it's about money, it was. You think it's higher? You think so? What would you say it was?
Higher.
Nah, I was told 30.
I think it would make him the number 3 paid receiver behind the eventual CeeDee Lamb contract and Justin Jefferson.
It was, from what I was told, it was 31.5. The offer they had on the table.
Regardless, you can tell in the nature of how crazy it is.
So they took that deal, obviously, which Niners weren't willing to take on Kendrick Bourne in a second. Again, another. Come on now, we've had Kendrick Bourne here. They knew and they were expecting the Patriots to offer less money. They didn't expect the Patriots, because initially what they wanted to do was go into this situation and talk about Brandon Aiyuk as greedy. They're already having the reporters talk about how he's childish. So when I'm looking at all this, I'm like, wait, hold up. Like, I don't like when players get talked about like that by reporters. So I had to hit up people. And the Niners thought Patriots were going to offer less, because initially what they were planning on doing, and this is also something where I think Brandon Aiyuk, if you're watching this, fire your agent, bro. Fire your agent. You think he's telling you what you want to hear, and this is why Brandon Aiyuk has requested certain meetings with the 49ers, because he's not acting on good faith for you, bro. He's trying to be that, let me keep both people happy. Let me keep John Lynch happy. Let me keep Brandon Aiyuk happy. And from what I'm hearing, man, it's one of those contract situations where, if I had to guess, Rohan, I don't see how the Niners move him, because there's only one team in the negotiating or trying to make a trade for the 49ers, and you're trading Brandon Aiyuk and you're getting $75 or 75 cents worth for him. Like, it ain't worth it. One. So the numbers that I've been told were 24.5 was the number that the Niners were willing to offer, the initial offer, and pretty much that was their main offer. They haven't really negotiated much more. 26 to 26.5 is what their highest offer will come into.
26.5, yeah.
That's their highest they will offer, is my assumption, as well as kind of what
it's not that different from what Pittsburgh is offering, isn't that right?
Pittsburgh has offered, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was 28.5 to 29.
28.5, yeah.
At least that's what I've kind of gotten word on, and he's happy to take that. He's happy to take 28.5. 28.5 sounds much better than 24.5. That's for sure. Like when people talk about numbers and stuff like that, that's where it's gotten tricky, because this whole thing where we see all these people talking about, and you guys have probably seen Pretty Ricky on Twitter, the dog guy, who are like, oh, it's done. It's never been a done deal, because the Niners have never accepted an offer from the Steelers. They have not offered anything of value. So the 49ers are at the point where they've gotten sick and tired of it, but they're not going to just take an offer just to take an offer from the Steelers. They're willing to sit out, and they're willing to play it out until they get a true offer. Because think, Rohan, if you're competing with somebody and you're the only one that's negotiating something, I'm not going to offer you more. So that's what I've been hearing.
You offer the moon and the earth, which is why this is a weird situation, right? Because like you said, the 49ers had a couple of teams that were interested in trading for Brandon Aiyuk, that wanted to give him a contract that he was looking for. Marco, I think in our last show, pointed out, or this might have been in a space, pointed out the Washington Commanders who were interested back during the draft. They clearly were not involved here. That led to the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. Sure, the 49ers might have found a trade package that you've seen, be out there, but the clear reality was Brandon Aiyuk did not want to go to either destination. I think that was pretty clear to the 49ers from the beginning, which is why the final team now that you've kind of been seen mention is the Pittsburgh Steelers. The issue with the Pittsburgh Steelers is they have an even worse package than the other two teams, because when you look at the way that what the Pittsburgh Steelers have player-wise, because the Niners not only want a pick, they probably want an impact player as well. That's the question. What do the Niners ultimately want, and who do the Steelers ultimately have that they're willing to actually give up? People are pointing out George Pickens. George Pickens will not be in this deal. I don't see it. The Steelers want to pair Brandon Aiyuk and George Pickens. I know that there are some offensive linemen that have been thrown out there, but there's a lot of aspects to it. But the big issue is there are 4 steps that need to work for a trade to happen. 1, the Niners need to find an actual suitor that wants Brandon Aiyuk. There are a couple out there. 2, before Brandon Aiyuk gets involved, they need to agree to a trade package. 3, once the Niners have agreed to an acceptable trade offer, Brandon Aiyuk needs to say, yes, I'm cool going to that team. I won't say no, even if the contract is good. And 4, Brandon Aiyuk needs to actually accept a contract from that team. So far, those 4 have not mixed. It's either Brandon Aiyuk has said no, or the Niners have said no to the trade package. And that's where you lead to the current standoff, because if you're in the Steelers situation, they are competing against themselves. They're not inclined to up their offer. They're trying to see if they can force the Niners' hand. And if you're in the Niners situation, they're trying to force Brandon Aiyuk's hand. We don't want to send you to Pittsburgh if they're not going to give us the offer. You have other offers on the table that that are good. We said, we gave you the chance. You clearly have said no, but this is our offer. You got to take it or leave it, or you got to take one of the offers that we've accepted on the table.
Not necessarily, because the Niners could come back and they could have been doing this. And this is something that has been mentioned to me by multiple people. I tweeted it out. Be on the lookout, man. The Niners could easily be saying, hey, Steelers, Patriots, Browns, all these other teams that have talked to Brandon Aiyuk, do us a favor, do the hard part, negotiate that contract for us. We're not going to accept anyone's trade offer, because we're going to sit down with Brandon Aiyuk after we're done, and we're like, hey, Brandon, look, we obviously can't figure something out with a trade. You're not accepting anything. You don't want to go to the Browns. You don't want to go to the Patriots. Those are the only 2 offers we really like. The Commanders aren't in it. They have not been in it since the draft. That's for sure. And I know that it looked like the Commanders, based off of a report, took themselves out recently. They were never in recently. So I don't get where that came, where they took themselves out. Now, what I do know is the Niners are willing to come back and sit down and try to find a happy medium. And this is where it's very fluid, because unless they get blown away with a trade offer, they're not moving him. And this is where this is going to play out for a while. I know everyone's like, well, they're talking. Yeah, they're talking. That's cool. You know how hard it is to get a negotiation going when you have a player who wants to get paid and you want an organization who wants to get what his value is, but then they're also telling you that they don't really value him. Like, it's a very hard and intense contract negotiation. I'm telling you right now, I don't see him getting traded, Ron. I don't know about you, but I don't see him getting traded. If he
And
does,
go ahead.
if he does, I'd be shocked because you're most likely only getting picks back. And if you're only getting picks back at this point, that tells me the Niners aren't serious.
It's a disservice to your team.
They're not serious about winning the Super Bowl this year if they only get picked back. And that's where it's a major concern. And it's egg all over the Niners' face if they make this trade. And they don't want to, the Niners don't like to look stupid. They don't. That's why they didn't trade Jimmy Garoppolo a year ago when they were getting offered a second. So for them, that is the biggest thing right now. It's a very tricky situation. The Niners, their initial offer and the offer that's pretty much been on the table is $24.5 to $25 million, which is just above what they paid Deebo Samuel a few years ago. They're willing to go up to 26.5, at least what they've told some people around the league. Rohan, I don't see how a deal gets done unless you're blown away with a first rounder and a second rounder. I don't see how it gets done, and I don't think the Steelers want to give up their first and second rounders.
And when you look at, especially now recently, with it coming public that Aiyuk has now turned down both the Cleveland Browns and the New England Patriots, I think you have to revisit his trade request initially. This trade request came at the beginning of July, right? I think it was like July 10th, 11th, whatever the date might be, 2 weeks before the start of training camp. When that trade request came, I think Brandon Aiyuk's mentality was to try and force the Niners' hand to up that package, up their deal before training camp in a last-minute attempt to use the kind of leverage that he had. A lot of people have been using that word leverage. I think when Brandon Aiyuk made the trade request, he didn't have an intention of actually leaving the San Francisco 49ers. He wanted to be respected and paid what he felt he was worth by the organization that he wanted to stay with. We've seen him go on a couple of media tours. He said, if the Niners don't pay me, I'm cool. I could go to Washington, get a quarterback and all of that. But the situation is much more complicated than that. It's not that he can just go there because of the steps that we've now seen. Now, when it comes to Aiyuk being inclined to be traded to Pittsburgh, I still ultimately think that if he were to choose a situation, it would be San Francisco. It's just when you look at this, and I think Aiyuk right now is also tentative on what he exactly wants because he's gotten good good contract offers from other teams, including one from the Patriots that would have been, one of the most significant trade offer contracts from a receiver that we've seen in this entire offseason, which includes, deals like the ones that he's been mentioned with Amon-Ra St. Brown and things like that. It would exceed those, Excuse me. And so to me, I think it is the way that this kind of ends is if the Pittsburgh Steelers can't put together one of those massive offers, which it doesn't seem like, first of all, it's not their way of doing business, but it doesn't seem like they're going to do. It leads Brandon Aiyuk to either take an offer he doesn't want to take or go back to the team that he ultimately is going to end with. And so the way that I kind of see the situation, and I've been on record saying this, I think the 49ers really messed this up at the beginning because they had a chance to get this deal done if they were foreseeing the market, especially with the explosion of receivers, and they didn't get that deal done back in March and then another opportunity later in the offseason. And then I think this segment right now, I don't know if Brandon Aiyuk exactly is going to come out the winner. I don't think he's coming out a loser by any means. He's going to get paid, but I don't know if he necessarily thought this situation was going to go as it has so far.
And I think either way this comes out, I think Brandon Aiyuk's the winner. Like no matter what.
Yeah. I don't want to say in the sense that he's a loser because he's going to get paid a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah,
a lot more money than he initially would have gotten. But go ahead.
Because what's crazy is a lot of people thought he had absolutely no leverage, right? Like he played this exactly how he should have, and now he could potentially be on the move, get paid what he wants, or get paid at least a contract that he feels is better than $24.5 million, $25 million. So he's in a win-win situation because now if he ends up getting traded to a team that is going to pay him, he got his bag. Now, if he doesn't, comes back to the Niners, their offer is most likely going to be higher than $24.5, $25 million. And now he figured out a situation where one, I do have more leverage than people thought I did, and the Niners thought I did, because I control what team I go to in terms of this trade. He kind of leveraged his way into making the Steelers be the only team that he's willing to negotiate with. Now the Niners don't have anything, or aren't going to get anything in return. So for me, looking at it, it's a win-win for Brock. Or not for Brock, for Brandon Aiyuk. I wanted to bring up a comment because they talked about Brock getting paid $60 million. So CJ Gray says, yeah, but if you're paying $60 million, then you can't pay everyone what they want. That's true to an extent, but we do realize that the $60 million that Brock's going to be getting per year, $65 million per year, that's not going to hit on the books until 2026, roughly 2027. Those numbers aren't going to be high the first couple of years. So you're truthfully, you could get Brandon Aiyuk done this year, lowers your cap this year, roll money over for next year, and you have enough money to get Brandon Aiyuk, get Brock Purdy, and then realistically, you have the money to get even Denominal Lenore or Charvarius Ward done. So they have the money right now. It's just the 49ers don't want to negotiate with Brandon Aiyuk. I don't think it's about having money. Rohan, do you think the Niners can get all these contracts? I know you're better with numbers and cap numbers and stuff like that. Can they figure it out? Can they afford all of these players?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you're talking about cap situation and paying Brock Purdy $60 million, you got to understand all these contracts are backloaded mainly because the cap increases every year. And so as you backload the contract, while a salary might jump from 30 million to 35 million, it might take up a lesser percentage of what the actual overall cap might be because of how the cap increases every year. And so that's why when you talk about maybe a 5-year, $300 million deal or whatever it might be, the first few years aren't going to be much. First, Brock Purdy's on his rookie deal next year. It's not like the cap hit is going to be significant for the 2025 season. The first year of his extension is only in 2026, and the Niners have another year, to spread out the cap ultimately. And they treat things with void years, and they have different ways of doing these contract situations. They could easily spread it out to where 2025 and 2026 aren't significant, knowing that you essentially have 6 years to cover the entire cost of the contract. And you know how all these contracts are. They haven't inflated last year. And so Brock's contract you don't worry about now. The seasons when you do have to worry are 26, 27, which is way down the line, because any player on this team currently, when you're talking about the 26 and 27 season, they're all expendable by that time. That's a situation where you only have to worry about in the future. The 49ers have a chance to pay off, Brandon Aiyuk. They have a chance to pay one of their cornerbacks. They have a chance to pay their quarterback. They've got a lot of opportunity.
And what's crazy is, Ron, let's talk a little bit about Trent Williams, right? Trent's contract.
Let's do it.
Obviously, Eric Dane, because obviously the Brandon Aiyuk situation is happening, and no one's really, not really, it's been a while since Trent's been at camp, right? Like,
wait, who is that again? I don't know.
Trent Williams, like one of the best left tackles in the NFL.
Nope. My guy right now is Jalen Moore. I've been watching Jalen Moore for 2 weeks. That's my left tackle.
Damn it. So Eric Dane says, can they adjust Trent's contract without adding more years? Because his contract already lasts until he's 39, and there's not much history of 40-year-old offensive linemen. Yo, Rohan, what if I told you the Niners told Trent Williams he's too old for an extension, or a restructured contract with money that's guaranteed into the following years, into the third year or into the second year? What if I told you they might have told him he's too old and they're afraid to give him money guaranteed in those years?
I would say it's bold, but I'd also say it could be warranted if they believe Trent Williams is going to retire after this season.
What if I told you Trent's ready to retire now?
Well, then you got a problem. You got a bit of a problem. And that's the thing with this Trent Williams situation, because he technically can threaten retirement to get guaranteed.
By the way,
money.
Just want to let you guys know, I'm not saying he's retiring.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want you guys to run with it. But I will say he is threatening to retire.
Because he can. Because the Niners know they can't win a Super Bowl without Trent Williams, as we said earlier. And the way that he kind of comes back to the field is get guaranteed money. Hell, he could be fined all he wants. He'll just say, screw it, I'm retiring. I don't need that.
Yep. What does he need that money for? It wasn't money he was planning on playing for anyways. Right? He almost retired a couple of years ago. They had to convince him when they restructured his contract and everything like that. They restructured his contract, give him a little more money up front. At that, like when I mean money up front, like in his pocket to make him satisfied. Man.
I think that there is still the room, when you consider a restructured contract, because the 49ers, they could do something very similar to what they did with Christian McCaffrey. You don't necessarily need to extend Trent Williams, though. What do you mean?
So you don't know, like you're saying, like I'm agreeing with you. You don't need to extend them.
Oh, yes.
If you do restructure, you're probably going to give them guaranteed money within next year as well.
That's the problem.
That's where it's the problem.
You have to give guaranteed money to Trent Williams for 2 years. It's not just one. He still, I believe, has 3 years remaining on his contract. But the number one thing that Trent Williams will want, he'll want some guaranteed money in that next year. It might not be, it's not going to be a significant amount. It might genuinely be like $7 million in an option bonus or $5 million in an option bonus. But Trent Williams, that's his way of securing a part of his future, to making sure that he's secure for next year, regardless of what happens. He's going to get some money. And that's the problem, because Williams is going to take this year by year, but he has all the power in the world right now.
He has absolutely all the power in the world. And him and Aiyuk are really good friends, man. They're really close. Not many people with Brandon Aiyuk calls his big brother. And that's his homie right there. That's his guy. And I'm sure they're talking about everything that's going on, and they both are in a similar situation, so they're leaning on each other. And I guarantee you, the way it's all going to play out, it's going to be interesting for the 49ers to get them both in the building, because this is the only team who's competing for a Super Bowl, Rohan, that has two of their best players that are not there.
That's true. That's
like,
true.
What do you do?
But no, Dallas is all of the guys there.
Dak is.
And Dak.
Micah's there. Micah's been practicing.
That's true. So it's only CD that's been out, right?
Yeah, CD's the only one who's been out, and even it'll hold it. No, I think he's holding out.
Yeah, I
don't think he's been there. But for them, they have two of their top players that are there at least. So like those players are expecting to get paid. Obviously, if you're there and and Micah's practicing, that's what's crazy. He's practicing when. It's been interesting because he's truly made their offense's life hell. Like it's crazy. Like I'm watching their camp because they have live streamed it, and he's in the backfield every time. And like if Dak's going to throw it, he will smack the ball out of Dak's hand. There's times where he smacked the ball out of his hand and looked at him like, you're not throwing it. Like you would think obviously quarterback's off limits, and he's done shit like that to piss off their coaching staff. It's crazy. Like it's no, I think we should blame Parag. I think we should blame Parag and John. I wouldn't necessarily say Kyle, because Kyle has had a personal one-on-one meeting with Brandon Aiyuk.
He said it throughout the period, like throughout this, he is out of the contract loop, kind of. I mean, we know Kyle.
Yeah, he knows what's going on. He's not out of the loop. John. Yeah. That's another thing, right? Kyle's saying he's not in the loop. He's involved, bro. He knows what's going on. He spoke with Brandon Aiyuk on his own one-on-one. And everything like that. He's had those meetings with him. He knows what's going on. Kyle just likes to play stupid with the media at times and act like he doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah. I want to say one thing, and it's not anything important necessarily. This has kind of been the funniest 2 days where I've seen the most amount of tweets or reports about something not happening. I've seen so many reports that a trade between Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers and the Steelers is not happening. Have you ever seen this much reporting about something that is not happening?
Rohan, you know why it's not? You know why those reports have came out?
They're getting a little butthurt that somebody else is reporting
Scooping them
instead of them.
They've gotten upset that Ricky don't get me wrong, he's been wrong in the sense of he should never have said it's a done deal, it's happening tonight or it's happening tomorrow morning. Like he's wrong by that. But the entire time, like he's been right with the teams that he's mentioned. Like, so that's definitely, they're mad that he's mentioning the teams before they are, and they're trying to like shoot him down right away. But one thing I have noticed is those guys have also backtracked a lot of their comments, right? Oh, it's very fluid. Anything could happen. They recently have said, like 2 days ago, they were like, oh, he's 100% getting moved. And then recently, Adam Schefter's like, well, he could end up still being with the 49ers this year. Like, wait, hold up. You just got mad at Ricky for doing that and saying that he's 100% getting on the move, but then you're backtracking on everything you're doing. Like, hold up. Like, let's let it play out. This is a very long, complex process. The Niners know that they don't want to give up Brandon Aiyuk for pennies on the dollar. They understand that they could still bring Brandon Aiyuk back and force him to play on the 5th-year option, or they could extend him on a contract that they and Brandon Ayuk's team comes together with after receiving offers from other teams. So it's like, I don't get why a lot of people are like, oh, he's 100% on the move. He's not 100% on the move because Niners haven't even accepted an offer. 100% being on the move is if Brandon Ayuk's cool with negotiating with the team and the Niners accept an offer. Once the Niners accept an offer, then contract negotiations with Brandon Aiyuk will be in full court press from that team. And then at that point, he'll have to go over there and he'll do his physicals and everything like that. We're still days away. I'd be shocked if something happens overnight. Like, the Steelers aren't willing to budge on what they're offering. If you're not willing to budge on what you're offering to the Niners, we're going to be in this process for a very long time. And this is why we've been like this since the second week of July when he initially requested his trade, because no teams want to give up valuable capital for a player this late into the process, knowing that the Niners don't have to trade him. Like, it's not that complicated. But then the media is making it a little bit worse because they've gotten upset with Ricky. They've gotten upset with themselves. They're starting to argue with themselves a little bit. Like, they're trying to not be wrong, and they're trying to shoot down Ricky when Ricky has been right when it comes to the teams. He's just been wrong that there's no deal that's been in place.
Absolute stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the absolute. He's been, if you would have reported it as it was happening, like, hey, the Niners are talking, they're in negotiations, people would have been like, damn, this dude's right. But instead, he said right away, as soon as they start talking to the Steelers, because that's the team he wants to go to, he was like, a done deal. It's not a done deal. I'll tell you that right now. There's no done deal. Some of the offers that I've heard that the Steelers have offered are shit offers, and I wouldn't take it any day. Even during the draft, I would not take an offer like that from them.
But that's also the part of this negotiation process where the Steelers are kind of competing against themselves, So something's going to have to give, but it's going to take some time. That's just the way that it feels.
It's going to for sure take time. And like I said, like, I'm not ruling out him coming back to the Niners on a 5th-year option, like, and playing out that 5th year. Okay, right. Guess what? You really don't have, because the Niners could truly do this right now, Rohan. And this is what people are struggling to. People are seeing these reports that are like that he's guaranteed on the move. The Niners could easily say, you know what, Pittsburgh, I'm done negotiating with you because you're not serious about a negotiation for a trade. Hey, Brandon, we're not taking that offer. There's no other team that you're willing to go to. You're going to play on your 5th-year option, or we're going to sign you. The end of deal. End of deal. And when it comes to next year, Brandon, guess what? We're going to franchise tag you, and then we'll trade you.
Yeah. And so you'll get a definitive one.
You will get a first.
Yeah, mid-first round pick, like a AJ Brown type package. If Aiyuk puts up 2 good, this would be his 3rd consecutive 1,000-yard season.
Another reason, Rohan, that the Niners are they're not willing to take the deal from Pittsburgh for like the second that they have. I know they've offered a second and everything like that. And some of the teams have offered seconds is because during the draft, they got offered by 2 different teams. They got offered a first-round pick.
First-round pick, right? Yeah.
They got offered a first-rounder by the Pittsburgh Steelers. They also got offered a first-round
pick.
Was
it during the draft, or was it like?
It was like a couple of days before.
2025, or was it a 20?
No, it was 2024. The Pittsburgh Steelers offered a first, and so did the Jaguars. Another team offered a really, 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 really good receiver. Some consider a very underrated receiver, and a 3rd-rounder. So for me, that's why they're in this situation where they're like, we can get a first for him. Well, no, you are not going to get a first for him now because you look desperate. They don't have to make the move for him, right? So that's where we're at, man. Wish I could give you guys more. Truthfully, wish I could give you guys more. The more I get, the more I think I might come to the channel instead of going to Twitter. Because
now, Marco, I want to ask you this one thing because you just shared a good amount. You obviously know a good amount, and we've talked about a lot of things. who do you kind of think is to blame right now in this situation, especially when it comes to the way the Niners have handled things?
100% the 49ers. There's
How
no
so?
question. How? Brandon Aiyuk was willing to negotiate with you right after the Super Bowl. He wanted to get a contract done right after the Super Bowl. If you get a contract done right after the Super Bowl, you probably get him at 26, roughly, maybe even less. You may truthfully get him at that 24 and a half right after the Super Bowl, because at that point he was willing to sit down and sign a contract right away just to get himself to be able to go train, but they weren't willing to negotiate. And when you're not willing to negotiate with somebody, it's disrespectful. Then they started negotiating with him. They give him a shitty offer after other players had already signed. So then that's where the disrespect came in, and that's where he felt disrespected. 100% the 49ers' fault, Rohan. 100%. There's no question asked. Like, it's you don't sit and wait until, like, we knew Amon-Ra was going to be eligible for a contract extension. Devontae Smith. We knew a lot of these players were going to be eligible,
Yeah.
and they waited.
So many. Yeah.
We knew you before like right after the Super Bowl. We were talking about it, and you even said the Niners need to get it done now because this market's going to blow up.
Because there were at least, I think I've written something about it or talked about it. There were 7 or 8 guys that I believed could have gotten a contract extension this year, and it started with Devontae Smith. Remember, Devontae Smith, the Eagles look superb right now because they got that deal done with 3 years, $75 million in that end. And that was, with not that many guarantees. That deal was beautiful. They were the first to get it done. It starts spiraling from there. Niners obviously wait, and it's they're in a much different situation because of that.
Rohan, what month was the combine? I forget.
February.
Like towards the middle or end, right? End of February.
End of February, start of March. Yeah,
bro. You were all over it during the combine. You talked about how Deebo Samuel may get traded. You talked about how they should sign Brandon Aiyuk now because their numbers are going to go up. And this is all during the combine. You talked about this. People shit you down for the Deebo talk. Ends up coming out. Guess what? Deebo was being shopped. Rohan was right. Rohan was right about getting an extension done with Brandon Aiyuk then, right? So the 49ers, it's all I don't care what anyone says. I truthfully believe it's the 49ers' fault for not getting a contract done during that time, because a lot of people were saying that the market was going to explode, and sure as hell exploded right away. So definitely, I think it's the Niners' fault.
If
you think it's their fault or is it BA's?
Oh, absolutely their fault. You know how many receivers that have gotten an extension worth over, like a true extension worth over $20 million this year? It's 10 receivers. 10. Oh, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Moore, AJ Brown, although he's coming on his second contract. Tyreek Hill got that restructure. Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Nico Collins, Michael Pittman, and Mike Evans. And then obviously Jerry Jeudy got a deal, a 3-year, $52 million deal when he got traded. So if you want to include $17 million, that's 11 receivers right there that just got massive deals this offseason, with about 7 or 8 of them coming off of their going into their second contract. So this is absolutely the 49ers' fault because they had the opportunity to sign him back then. And the issue is, this is the part where the lowballing hurts them and the inability to foresee the market when there are 7 to 8 guys that are going to sign within the next few months. And I'm not even including CeeDee Lamb, and in addition, T. Higgins didn't get his deal. And
T. Higgins,
Jamar
and
Chase.
The thing too, though, is I'm going to say T. Higgins is actually did get an extension. The reason why is he went from his lower contract to a franchise tag, so he got 21. So technically, he got a 1 year contract.
Exactly, but the point being, there were at least 10 guys that you thought could get rookie scale extensions, and the Niners knew this. So if you go back then and you pay him the $26 million rather than the 23 or 24 or whatever the initial offer was, if you pay him the 26, 27 million, and this is just salary, right? Not the way the contract is structured. If you paid him back in March when, when he wanted a deal right after the Super Bowl, You're able to get this done. You look like a genius right now because Brandon Aiyuk was going to have a good season anyway next year. You're probably increasing his output. And you look like a genius right now when another team like the Dallas Cowboys is struggling to get a deal done with their star receiver. And so that's the problem where the 49ers had an opportunity early. It's not like they were never given an opportunity because I said at the beginning, it's in Brandon Ayuk's best interest to wait for this market to go. But clearly he wanted to sign a deal early on. He even acknowledged that there were a couple of times that they were close. And that was the issue. The Niners had they had the ball in their hands and they dropped it. And now they're paying the repercussions for it. And they're going to have to pay him more money if they want to keep him.
Absolutely. And I think so. 49ers Faithful Forever says, where'd that one go? Oh, no, he did. No, so if you go back, 49ers Faithful, he did. You go back the one where you said 30 million. Go back to earlier in the show. I talked about it. He did turn down, from what I was told, 31.5 is what the New England offered. Some people said 30. I know a couple in the chat said it was a little higher. Rohan said it was a little higher. Rohan heard little higher number. Not sure what Rohan heard or if he wants to say what he heard. But I heard 31.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I heard 31.5 was what it was. I wanted to get to this one where he says 49ers fault early. Ayuk's dragging ass now. But that's not Ayuk's fault that he's dragging ass. Right? Think about like so with the 49ers, when it comes to the contract situation, the market skyrocketed. So why would he want to settle for less when it's a new market now? I was giving you a discount on a no market rate because I wanted to be the first one signed. I wanted it to set the market, and then everyone else could surpass me. I didn't care. Well, you had them surpass me. Now I waited. I get to benefit from that market now. That's the Niners' fault. I don't think that's Brandon Aiyuk's dragging ass. I think he benefited from the Niners holding off. Shout out to Roger, my guy. First super chat on Clutch Gene Sports. He says, "What up, Marco? What's up, Rohan? In case the trade does happen with the Steelers, what QB do y'all think would have better results with BA?" This is a great question, Rohan. I'll let you hit this one first.
Yeah. I honestly think that this would be I think it would be Russell Wilson. And the reason is Russell Wilson, I don't think, is the level of quarterback that he was. I don't think he has been the level of quarterback that, many think of him to be since the 2020-21 season, for the last 3 years. But the thing Russell Wilson has is a deep ball. And now you have two players who can serve as a deep threat. Because if you're looking at, the yards per attempt, who are the guys who led the league last year? George Pickens is right up there at 18 plus yards per attempt, and Brandon Aiyuk was, I think, top 3 with like 17.9 or 17 point something. You now have Russell Wilson throwing deep passes to both of those guys. That's what intrigues me. And, to me, with both of those guys being able to beat man coverage, I'm curious to see how does that elevate his play after some subpar play over the last few years.
And I think it benefits both. And I wouldn't necessarily say one quarterback or the other because I think Justin Fields wants to push the ball down the field. I think Justin Fields wants to have a more of a down the field passing attack rather than what we saw what he did with the Bears. They didn't really have that for him, right? They were trying to ask him to throw the short intermediate routes, and that's not his game. Wasn't his game at Ohio State. He wants to throw those deep dig routes, those deep 9 balls. Posts, that's what he wants to do. He doesn't really want to come back to stuff like that. If that's what he wants to do, and I think it kind of fits his game in a way because that's everything that Brandon Aiyuk can do. But then when you also put in Russell Wilson, I thought Russell Wilson still has a good deep ball. I thought he did well with some of the receivers that the Broncos have. So I think it actually benefits both. And I know Rohan touched on the Russell Wilson, so I won't go too deep into that one. But I think it does benefit both. Rohan, do you have a time that you have to be out of here by?
No, we're good.
Let's give them some of these more comments in. So you saw where's it at? Even if BA overplayed his hand, that doesn't mean the 49ers should now trade him for a pack of ass. Do you agree with this, Rohan?
Now, even if BA overplayed his hand, does that mean the 49ers should trade him? No, because like we said, The reason that we have a situation in the first place is because of the organization. It's not because of Brandon Aiyuk. It's because of the organization. Now, did BA overplay his hand? I think that's a to be determined. I think it depends on how the situation ends. I can understand the argument for it, but I don't think that it means the 49ers should trade him. When you can't come to an agreement on a team and a package, because the Niners have to agree to a package and BA has to agree to a team for the contract, it's going to be tough to get a deal executed that benefits both BA, the Niners, and whatever team is looking to acquire him. That's the hard part of making this all work. And so right now, I believe, my belief is that the 49ers are going to keep Brandon Aiyuk, and he's going to remain a Niner through this issue. And I know that might seem like the unforeseen possibility right now, just because when you hear all the national reports, the shift in attention has been from Brandon Aiyuk. There's interest to it's more likely he's traded than not. Even more likely he's traded potentially to the Pittsburgh Steelers than other teams. And so to me, that's the reason where there might be some risk right now and some uncertainty. But I think Brandon Aiyuk remains a 49er. I think the reason is that when you look at the options that he's going to be presented, I don't think San Francisco accepts a package that they like from Pittsburgh. And I don't think Aiyuk is going to go to one of the other teams that the Niners have reportedly accepted trade packages from. And so I think it just brings them two back to the drawing table. The 49ers have a good understanding of how the other offers are that Brandon Aiyuk has accepted, and they try and find a middle ground from their current offer to match what some of the other offers might be, more so in the guaranteed money range.
So this is a report from Mike Reese, ESPN NFL national reporter for the New England Patriots.
Yeah.
This was 32 million is what he reported. So you heard 32.5. I heard 31.5.
Yeah.
Sounds all about right within that range. Now you never really get a true number. Usually it's between these. So that makes a lot of sense there. Rep the Bay wants us to talk about the Mike Silver article, talking about how the biggest factor to this is BA being on the hug watch, which led to Kyle being pissed. No, it wasn't. So I did see that article. I did see how you got it was based off of the hug. It wasn't because of the hug. I was also told similar, but it wasn't because of the hug. It was more so Kyle Shanahan's getting frustrated that this noise is around his team, and he's getting asked about Brandon Aiyuk. He doesn't want to be asked about Brandon Aiyuk. He wants the deal to get done. He wants everything to be finalized because, truthfully, Kyle was the one who's having to answer these questions. John isn't. John's not going to the media. So he's getting asked these questions, and it's kind of bothering him. He feels like it's bothering his team a little bit because his team is now being asked these questions. He's over it, which a head coach probably would get over it when your team doesn't know who's going to be their starting X receiver. So I think that's what it means. I don't think the hug means anything. I don't think that's what he was talking about. Now, it was also a factor where if you pay attention, he didn't hug John Lynch. He's also negotiating with John Lynch, right? So there's riffled feathers there. He's upset with John Lynch. That's why he didn't give him a bro hug. He gave Kyle Shanahan a bro hug. He had a meeting with him one-on-one. So it's like maybe he feels like Kyle Shanahan wants him there, and he feels like John Lynch doesn't want him there. So it's all up to speculation on stuff like that. I thought Mike Silver's about the Kyle Shanahan comment. I thought that was interesting. Him not wanting to be there. Rohan, do you have any thoughts on that?
Are you talking about the Kyle not being happy kind of thing? He's unhappy with the way that this has been handled?
Yeah, but the way Mike Silver reported it was like he included the hug gate, where they hugged each other, so that's why he got mad that he hugged him, but not John Lynch.
No, I don't care. I don't care about the hug, especially if it's between Brandon Aiyuk and John Lynch. Honestly, seemed like Lynch was preoccupied, and regardless, I don't care to decipher a hug. It was the cameras were very well there. It was obviously very well documented. I don't think that changes anything. As for the attention, I don't think Kyle Shanahan likes the attention at all. I think that's true. I don't think he likes the attention at all. Why? Because he has to go up to the podium, every few days and answer questions. And obviously, it's a horrible time. You saw how he answered him yesterday. I'm surprised he wasn't pressed a little bit more on the subject about how things have spiraled to this situation. But he's not a big fan of answering these questions. I think that's where more of the issue kind of comes from.
I'm trying to figure out here. I have it. I got it. So I'm going to turn the audio off just because someone wants me to bring it up. Is that cool with you, Rohan, if I bring up that video?
Let's do it.
So this is the video that I believe Mike Silver is commenting on. So Eric, I believe that's who commented to pull it up. Present share screen. This is the one, Ron. Can you see it? It's on the screen.
It is now. There we go.
Cool. So it's on the screen. So this is what he's talking about. This is what Mike Silver's talking about. You see him. He says hi to John Lynch, shakes his hand, kind of steps away from him a little bit, doesn't really give him a hug. John Lynch is playing catch with Kyle Shanahan, goes up, gives a bro hug. To be honest, it looks like Kyle Shanahan goes in on that hug. Look at it. And this is just weird to analyze. Kyle Shanahan goes in on a hug, give him a hug. There's not much to it. Like, I don't get why Mike Silver talked about it. Like, how does that make a coach mad, bro? Like, that, Ron, do you think Kyle Shanahan got mad about that?
No, I don't think I don't think he even he thought it would be a big media moment.
Yeah,
other than that Brandon Aiyuk showing his face.
And the only reason why I'm talking about this hug is because Mike Silver obviously is brought up on the comments, and Mike Silver mentioned it during his report. He talked about it, like about how the hug might have made Kyle Shanahan mad. I think more so what made Kyle Shanahan mad is this whole entire situation, him being there, him being the focal point of the talk of training camp rather than actually training camp and players that are actually doing well, like D. Winters, Braden Willis, blah, blah, blah. I thought it was I agree. I think it was a joke for including that on a report and saying that might have pissed Kyle off. Eric Date said, "Can you slow it down so I can count how many times Kyle patted Aiyuk on the back?" Eric is an instigator, and I love it.
Man. That's a good question.
Eric's an instigator, and I love it. Rohan, anything else regarding training camp today or the Brandon Aiyuk and Trent Williams saga?
Nah, it's time for the preseason. That's the big part now. I'm excited for that. We'll see how that ultimately goes down. Yeah, I mean, we're getting closer to football, and it just seems like there's some storyline always kind of coming with this team. Obviously, Brandon Aiyuk is going to probably take over the media portion of it until some move happens, be it it's a trade, be it it's something else. Real quick, Yadam injury news. I want to say this. Did not get a report on it yesterday from Shanahan. He has been out the last 2 days, and I'm assuming it's an injury if he's out multiple days because Yadam did not take a single rest day so far.
It could also be a rest day.
It could, but he has 2 in a row, which is usually not the case.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
And so I think he might have had something bothering him on Sunday because he had the Monday off, did not practice either Tuesday or Wednesday. So he might have had something on Sunday.
Actually, I think I figured it out, Rohan. Isaac Yiadom wants a contract extension from the 49ers.
There we go. $24 million is the starting point. We'll see if they can reach it. If not, we might have another holdout. Obviously,
Yiadom doesn't want a contract extension, but he's obviously been one of the top corners of the 49ers, and it's been cool to see. Rohan, you want to do another show regarding the preseason game? Obviously, because training camp's over, right? No one could watch training camp unless you're a media reporter. Training camp is preseason is about to be here, so we could possibly talk actual preseason game and who we're expecting to have good play. Obviously, starters won't go, so it's a good portion of your backups and stuff like that. So we could actually talk about actual football instead of Brandon Aiyuk not being here.
I'm excited about that. We're going to probably get something done, before the weekends, before that preseason game is on Saturday, I believe. So maybe catch a show from us on Friday. We'll figure out a time, or maybe before the game on Saturday, we'll figure something out.
Make sure you guys tune in for the next one. We'll be going live hopefully before Saturday, Thursday, Friday. I'll be live tomorrow with Jesse Naylor of Last Second Sports as well as Ashley Ariana on Friday. Rohan, do you have anything going on the rest of the weekend or week? Sorry, not weekend.
We'll see. I am traveling a bit. We'll be in New York actually for the next few days, but we got to probably get one more show done, especially if some Brandon Aiyuk stuff drops. But I wanted to say thank you. The chat was buzzing today. We had a lot of questions, just a lot of comments, a lot of conversation, which is what we always appreciate. Went a little longer than normal, especially given that it was a mix of a training camp and a Brandon Aiyuk kind of podcast. But we appreciate you all. Thank you guys so much.
You gonna be in New York, or like Buffalo, New York, or like
No,
Brooklyn, New York?
Lower Manhattan. I'm going to be a little bit all around here and there for a couple of days.
Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Rohan's obviously going to be in New York. Sounds like that's something we got to monitor. Is Rohan really a California boy? Is he he's becoming an East Coast guy? Like, that's something I'm going to keep an eye on because I don't trust them East Coast guys. That's for sure.
We'll see what we can do, man. I mean,
I'll give Rohan a hug next time I see him. I'll tell you guys how that goes. I'll analyze the hug and everything like that.
And trust me, I'm gonna be counting the amount of pats now. I'm counting it. If it's 4 or 5, I'm thinking, oh shoot, he gonna be mad at me. He might be, or maybe if it's 3, he's treating me to dinner. So I'm definitely gonna be counting.
And I'll definitely be on watch because I don't think Brandon Aiyuk's going anywhere. But that's it for today's show, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good rest of y'all day. Peace.